Hi families, my name is Christy Almeida and I am the dual language K through 5 coordinator for this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Strema and I'm principal of MAS. And as promised, Ms. Almeida and I shared earlier this year that we would provide some more information around an assessment that our second and fifth graders participate in as a way of collecting data on the effectiveness of our dual language program. And while it is an assessment that the students take part in, it is not a standardized assessment in way of grading. It's more of a language ability test that now allows us to gauge how well the program is meeting student needs, and especially allows us to make programmatic changes and decisions based on real data in grades 2 and 5. And so we are going to share a short presentation with you, hopefully provide some essential answers to questions that parents have had in the past. And then at the end, if you still have questions, please feel free to email us and we'll be happy to connect with you to answer individual questions. We have met and consulted with STAMPe experts, and they have helped us create this presentation, as well as provided a video that they have created that you will later see as well. So we hope that you find this useful and helpful, and please feel free to email us after if you still have lingering questions.
Yep. So with that, we're just going to start with a basic overview of the STAMP assessment and assessments in general. So really there are 3 different types of ways that we can assess language. We have achievement assessments, performance assessments, and proficiency assessments. And the STAMP really falls under the category of proficiency assessment. With an achievement assessment, we're really measuring the ability to repeat certain language levels and certain elements of those language levels taught across a span of time. Performance assessments are really measuring the ability to use that language in certain situations. So really kind of situational. If you are in a social setting, how do you utilize the language? If you're in an academic setting, how do you utilize the language? And then we have a proficiency assessment, which really measures the ability to use the language really in just real world situations. So not so much academic, it really is conversational and receptive, the ability to understand, and then oral production, the ability to actually produce the language. This also includes reading and writing. So the STAMP E, it stands for Standards-Based Measurement or Proficiency. It is a web-based computer adaptive proficiency assessment. In the video we're going to show you a little later, we'll go into further detail. But what that really means is that each student is not necessarily seeing the same questions and don't have the same questions in front of them. The assessment really adapts to the answers that the student gives. And in that way, it allows for the program to find sort of that sweet spot of language proficiency to really measure where they are performance-wise with their use of the language. It's important to note, you might notice the E at the end of STAMP. So the E just stands for elementary or elementary age learners. So STAMP without the E is utilized for older language learners. And really, it's important to note that these assessments are designed to be linguistically appropriate for learners who are taking world language or who are immersed in a dual language program, which your children are, or any other school environments. And so essentially, this assessment was created for students who are in this particular setting. So in our school, we have our 90-10 model that then turns eventually into a 50-50 model. This assessment is designed to measure their proficiency based on the setting that they've been learning in.
So an important thing that Ms. Almeida mentioned is that this is a self-leveling assessment, which is why it's assessed using a computer. So while this is a standards-based, it's not a standardized assessment, meaning that not all students will see the same question. They'll start off on the same question, but then the computer will immediately start to increase the difficulty or decrease the difficulty based on the student's ability to navigate the initial question posed. And this gives us an accurate view of how they are navigating the language and what their proficiency levels are.
All right, so we're just going to take a closer look at the assessment. We're going to sort of take a peek and just give you a little idea of what the assessment actually looks like, or the web-based assessment actually looks like. And so there are, as mentioned before, there are 4 components really to language acquisition. We have reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And it's important to mention that the receptive skills are really what help to inform the leveling as the child is going across the assessment pages, so to speak.
And so please, it's really important that we shift our mindset from thinking about this as a graded assessment, or that any kind of a grade that's yielded from or that from taking this assessment is a grade or puts you on it, a spectrum of where you're supposed to be versus where other students are. Really, what it is a system that allows us to know in second grade what are our students doing within these 4 skills that we're assessing, and in 5th grade what are students doing within these 4 skills, and then how do they measure against nationwide rather, students who are taking the same assessment. What does that say about our program, and where are we strong in, and where do we need more support in? It's not so much as the same as taking a math or science state test where you yield a whole score at the end. It's again, it's more of a range and of proficiency, which we will provide later, a rubric for you to be able to see where your child falls on that spectrum.
Yeah, and just to kind of give an example, an illustration, think about it as a fitness test. If anyone were to go get a fitness test to see how your heart is doing, how much weight you can lift, at the end of the day, you're really just trying to see where your physical body lies so that you know where to improve. And if a trainer is training a bunch of people and we see a pattern that all of the individuals can't run more than 5 minutes, well, then we know that the trainer needs some help with cardio or whatever the case may be. So in the same way, we're just trying to evaluate the language fitness of our students. There is no grade. We are just trying to find what areas of strength exist. What are we doing really well? What are we doing right? And what are the areas that we need to improve? So there is no grade. There is no right or wrong or bad. It is just a little litmus test into our program, and it's essential. I know parents, as a parent myself, and as a teacher, we all want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for our kids. And so this assessment is really going to help us to glean some really helpful data so that we can continue to make the program the best it can be.
And so here's the video that we were referring to. It comes directly from the STAMPe assessment creators, Avant, sorry, assessment. And this video is parent facing and educator facing, and answers some questions that I know have been posed in the past.
In the real world, if you really want to live in a country abroad, you really want to communicate with people, all 4 skills are valued in the society: in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Our mission is basically to contribute to a more bilingual, a more multicultural, multilingual world, and we work directly with teachers and schools in order to make that happen. We do this not necessarily by being a language learning company. We complement the language learning process by assessing where they're at and providing valuable information in terms of their level of where they're at, and if corrections are needed, they can use that information in order to make better decisions about their program. In our system, everybody who takes the STAMPe test, the score is stored in our system. Teachers can access their student scores, see the reading, writing, listening, and speaking scores for each one of their students. They can run averages for each one of the skills, see the averages by grade to make sure that as students move up in a program, their STAMPe level is improving, their ability in the foreign language is improving. We also offer a custom data analysis here at Avant, where we use other types of software that make data visualization easier for teachers, and it allows them to see patterns that perhaps they wouldn't be able to see if they don't have that background in data. Linear tests are tests where no matter who's taking the test, they're going to see exactly the same question. It means that a test may have from question 1 to 30, and whether you are extremely proficient or whether you have a very low proficiency level, everybody will see exactly the same 30 questions. This is not the approach that we use at Avant. We use something better, which is called adaptive algorithms. Basically, everybody starts by taking a smaller number of items in the beginning of the test, which are the same for everybody, but depending on their response, if they get these items correct or incorrect, we're going to start showing items that are more aligned with their proficiency level. And by doing this, we're better able to zoom in on their actual proficiency, because the moment they start making mistakes, that's exactly the spot where their proficiency is. The STAMPe test is developed based on the STAMPe scale, but the STAMPe scale maps perfectly to the ACTFL scale. The ACTFL standards were created to serve as a tool, a common language that teachers of foreign languages in the United States, started here, can use in order to help students move from one level to the next. It clarifies exactly the kinds of abilities and things that the students should be able to do in terms of skills and the types of text they should be able to interact with at each one of the given levels of what's called the ACTFL proficiency scale. So a STAMPe level of 1 indicates an ACTFL level of novice low. A STAMPe level of 2, an ACTFL level of novice mid. So on the STAMPe test, reading and listening, the receptive skills, they are tested through multiple choice items. And multiple choice items have been shown to be very reliable for measuring proficiency. And in the writing and the speaking part of the test, we have prompts, little scenarios, little snippets of real-world communication scenarios that they have to either write about or talk about. And we have 3 of those. We have 3 writing prompts and we have 3 speaking prompts. And they tap into very different constructs, right? You may have a better ability in the receptive skills because you don't have to generate language, and usually that's the case. People have better receptive skills than productive skills. A score is a score and it has a meaning, but if you don't use it, if you just take the test and you don't look at it, it's not being used for something that can improve outcomes. So our professional development team helps teachers and programs look at the STAMPe scores and identify patterns in what's going on and make interventions, perhaps. Start discussing what kinds of interventions can be made in order to help them improve the quality of the program and make sure that the students are getting to the point that the program wants them to be at a certain level. We have a tool called Advance, which is a tool that we've decided to make available to the public. Different schools and districts, they can have their teachers be trained using the same methodology we train our raters, and that helps to reduce bias, for example, in the classroom, because if you have different teachers teaching the same level, let's say a grade 4 at a given school, and one teacher happens to be more lenient than the other, it's not fair for a student to receive a certain score just because they happen to be studying with this teacher versus the other one. So it's a matter of fairness. By using Advance, we make sure that everybody who goes through the system has been calibrated and is free of bias. They are rating the writing responses and the speaking responses to the correct level. And our aim is always to provide a benefit back to the person taking our assessment so they can act on that information. The world is becoming more multicultural every single day. More than ever before, you go out in the street and you find people who speak a different language, who speak a different dialect, who come from a different culture. So nowadays, employers as well, they're saying that being bilingual is a very important skill in the workplace because these companies are expanding to other countries, and having people who understand not only the language, but also the culture, those two things are so connected, allows these companies to better reach their markets, to give to the market what the market is asking for. Just in terms of experiencing life, you are a more complete human, and when you learn a second language, you might actually discover things about yourself that you wouldn't have discovered otherwise.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, that video certainly gave us a nice overview of the goal behind the STAMPe and how it's administered and how it's even scored. And so really we're just going to show you how the students access the test very quickly. They'll have this kind of beginning page. There's reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And then this is an example of a reading section. So they would have to read that sentence, ¿Dónde está el pájaro? And they would have to click and find the pájaro, which is the parrot or the bird. Again, an example of a reading section. ¿Qué tiempo hace? So they have to read the sentence. They see the picture that goes with the question, and then they pick multiple choice. So there are different ways to show your answers, right? Me gusta el animal grande. Tiene rayas negras y blancas y corre muy rápido como un caballo. ¿Qué es? So again, they're reading that, and now they have to answer that question that's in the sentences that they just read, the question they just read, and they pick the picture that matches. Writing section. So you can see here, there is something that they have to read. There's a picture that matches, and then they have to write the answer where it's, if you see on the right-hand side, write your answer below. And there are a few reminders: write in Spanish, use complete sentences, write as much as you can, organize your thoughts. So they have a little bit of a kind of an organization template, but really the purpose here is to see how are they using their grammar, their syntax in written form, so that that can be evaluated. Then there's a listening section. As you can see, there's a play button up there. So the children would play an audio recording, and they would have to respond to that audio recording and basically demonstrate an understanding of what they heard. We purchased headphones, this year. So we have brand new headphones, really great quality headphones with microphones, because as we're going to learn in a moment, there is also a speaking section. And so again, sample prompt. They're going to look at the picture, they read a passage, and then they press a button, and then they start recording their response in the target language, which for us is Spanish. So ultimately, there are many key benefits and features. This presentation is going to be sent to you, so you have this recording, but you will also have the PowerPoint. So you'll be able to go back into, for example, this slide and look at it with more detail. But overall, really what we want to hit home, or the ideas that we would like to reiterate, is that the purpose of this assessment is really not to give a grade. It's nothing that the students should be nervous about. It's nothing that anyone can prepare for. This is many years in the making. So the second graders that are taking it, we are trying to see how much they have developed in their language in all four of those components we talked about from kindergarten to second grade. This is a collective, progressive, over time assessment. So there is nothing that you have to do as parents. You've already given your children the gift of a second language by putting them in the program. You're supporting them at home with homework. That's all you can ever do. At this point, really what we just need is data. We just need to see how they perform in these areas so that we can analyze our strengths as a program, analyze areas that need improvement, so that we can continue to grow and develop the program.
And truly, we shouldn't prepare for this exam in way of a state test standardized exam, because you want the true data to reflect what our students can do, because that is an accurate picture that we need to make programmatic changes, to make instructional decisions, to ensure that our program is continuing to grow. Now, in the last 2 years that this MAS has, students have taken the STAMPe assessment, we have shown that we actually performed above the national standard. Our second and fifth graders typically did perform slightly higher than the students who take the STAMPe assessment in grade 2 and grade 5. But within those performance levels, what really is the true gift of this assessment is what they're doing well in and what we can do better for them via program. And so really, we want to shift away from this idea of a grade or students falling within a grade above or grade below. It's not really about that. It's about how fluent and how much they can navigate the language and what has our program enabled them to do.
So here, this is a rubric that basically shows you in great detail how your children are scored in writing and speaking. As I mentioned before, these slides are going to be made available to you. So we encourage you, if you'd like to see just in greater detail what exactly the criteria is for different scores, please feel free to go back into the presentation and take a look at this slide, because it is very informative if it's something that you're interested in. So in terms of next steps, so as we mentioned, the second and fifth graders in Dos Caminos are going to be taking the STAMPe assessment at the beginning of June. There is nothing that you need to do to prepare for this at all. And any feedback that comes with this assessment with regard to your individual child, I know we've talked a lot about the collective data to see how we're doing as a district. But at the same time, it is important for us to know where our individual students fall so we can meet their needs individually. That is going to be reflected in your child's narrative and in their achievement report at the end of June. So you will have a nice understanding, a nice basic understanding of any needs that have come up based on the STAMPe assessment.
Yes, and so we'll add that to the report card, and we will be available to answer any questions that you may have following this presentation. But we thought that this was a really great way to get all the information to you on your own time, and then with any other questions that you may have, we will make ourselves available and contact you individually. Please know that we will then share with you how, after we collect the stamp data, we have made changes to the program and where the strengths are overall programmatically as we enter next year. So thank you so much, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.